What is culture, and how can we define it? Well, there are multiple ways that we can look at and understand what culture is. For example, we might think of culture as information. Formally defined, we might give it a definition such as this: that culture is any kind of information that is acquired from members of species through social learning that can influence individuals' behaviors. Or simplified, that culture is information. Culture is information that you learn from other people that can influence how you behave, influence your thoughts and feelings and actions. When we think about culture as information, you could also think of culture as maybe made from elements. That cultures can be made of objective and subjective elements. For example, objective elements being those parts of culture that are explicit, tangible, physical, that you can touch, taste, feel, and see physically with your eyes. These are the parts of culture that survive as artifacts. This might be food, or art, or architecture, or books, texts, scrolls, or clothing. This is the part of culture that is tangible. And subjective elements of culture are those that might be intangible. They are the psychological and sociological processes associated with culture. You can think of this as the norms, as the attitudes, behaviors, beliefs, religions, values that cultures have and share. So when you think about culture, you could also maybe define it by different elements. You also might think of culture as a group of people, right? That a culture is simply a group of people who exist within some kind of shared context, either defined by borders, defined by interests, by groups, by sports teams, or whatever. That something connects them. That culture can also be a group of people connected in some way. Thinking about these all together, there are many ways that you could define or look at culture. That you might see culture as information, as people, as different elements. For the purpose of this class, I'm not going to tell you that culture has to be one thing, because as you can see, culture is many things. And through this class, what I want you to do, instead of sticking strictly to a definition of culture, I want you to think about how you define culture and how culture is being defined in class. When you look at a study, when you look at a textbook or a video, or see culture discussed in class, I want you to think about how it's being used, how we're defining it, because how we define it affects the way we understand and study it. So think for yourself, what is culture? Where I'd like to end this video is I'd like to ask you to reflect on your culture, to reflect on what you believe your culture is when you think about it in these different ways. If you think about culture as a group of people, what does your culture look like? If you think of culture as information, what does that look like? Information that you learn from the people around you that shape how you think and feel and act. And if you think of your culture in terms of objective and subjective elements, what does that look like? The tangible and intangible pieces of your culture.